It's the 60 Go podcast brought to you by Mint Sports. Joining me on the phone, Damien Seibold. Seibs, how are you, mate?
I am good, Tom. How are you?
I'm good. Have you spoken to your brother? He must have had a bit of a heart attack in the second half.
I have spoken to him, actually, but we didn't really talk too much about the game. The only things we spoke about were how good their start was and how good Matt Lodge was for them. That's probably the only two things. He was too busy wanting to send through a photo with Tim Zoo that he had on Sunday night. So that, a good win, and then getting to meet Tim Zoo, I think, made him quite happy.
Yeah, well, Tim's the man. But I just want to talk about the game for a second. So Manly, I still think are probably slim chance of making the 8, but I wouldn't put them in there just yet. But I just want to talk about Cronulla because they're more likely, I suppose. But they've got really concerning signs. And if you look over the past 2 weeks, they've conceded basically 50 points from the second half of the Warriors game to the first half of the Manly game. Concerning issues there, and I'm not sure they can pull this back.
I agree, mate. Some of the results on the weekend, in particular the Sharks game, Sharks Manly. Well, last week we spoke about who we thought was gone. Well, I've changed my mind now. The Knights and Manly are a legit chance if you have a look at their runs home and how ordinary Cronulla's going. I mean, they made all these changes. One of the guys I brought in was Trindle. Let's be fair, Trindle was really, really ordinary on the weekend, and I think Matt Moylan's a good footballer. So, do they go straight back to him? Does Fitzgibbon, is he going to stay strong? Is he going to be stubborn? Hang on to Trindle? They've got so many defensive issues. On that left-hand edge, it doesn't matter who's there, because that whole left edge was different. So I don't think I can blame the people that have been there.
Do you think that they go back to Talakai because they are committed to him long term? Like his extension actually doesn't kick in till next year, I think.
In my opinion, they have to go back to Talakai. They missed his yardage, so in that first half, probably the first 50 minutes, Cronulla struggled with the wind to get out of their own 20, 30 metres, and that's where Talakai really comes to the fore. His yardage game is excellent. He gets him on the front foot, so I think they missed him big time.
Manly were outstanding, particularly in the first half. The loss of Jake really set the wheels in motion for a Cronulla comeback, but Matt Lodge was really good for them. Josh Aloiai is a loss. We'll see with his injury how long he's out for. But Daly Cherry-Evans, this is the best he has ever played.
Mate, you think of, first of all, yeah, you're right. Cherry-Evans is on fire. And I agree. I don't think he's ever played better than what he has this year. He's really doing a good job leading the team around, and he seems to have a bit of that creativity back that he had he'd lost over the last few years, to be honest. Whether or not Tommy being so good just let him take a backward step, but he certainly got that creativity back. For mine, in that game, they really felt the pinch of the Aloiai injury, losing Paseka in the first 5 minutes of the game, and then when they lost Jake Trbojevic with 15, 16 minutes to go, that's when the wheels really fell off. And, I don't think he would be too disappointed in the fact that it's understandable. You lose 3 middles, 2 of them in the first, 10, 15 minutes of the game. I think Aloiai might have been a little bit after that, but certainly Paseka was the first 5 minutes. So it's only natural that the fatigue was going to catch up with them, and Matt Lodge was outstanding for them.
The other big result over the weekend was the Knights beating the Storm. Storm got out to a fast start, and I thought it was, I thought it looked ominous for Newcastle there at one stage. But the Knights are playing really tough, and it's tough to gauge anything. They smashed the Dogs a couple of weeks ago by 60-odd points, and they beat the Tigers after that. It's tough to gauge anything from those games, but this one is certainly one to rubber stamp.
It certainly is, mate. The Knights, they've been going well, they've been looking good, but that was a true test. I'm starting to think the Storm aren't quite as good as what I thought they were, though. The win against the Roosters the week before, the scoreline probably disguised a few things. It might have been a case of the Roosters weren't as bad as what we thought that game, and the Storm weren't quite as good as what we thought. There was a couple of opportunistic tries that you still got to score them. It doesn't matter how you get them. But, it was one of those games that I think the score might not have been a true indication of the actual contest.
Well, there's been two games like that in recent times. The Storm Roosters one, but also the Sharks and Tigers game where Sharks blew them out of the water in the second half, but they were 12 all at half time and the Tigers had no one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That was really misleading because the Tigers they're struggling, and they don't look like they're improving at all. Do you think the Sharks could be? Do you think they could be gone? Do you reckon they'll slip out of the 8?
Absolutely. I think it's really tough to see them making a top 8 spot with their run home. They've got Penrith this weekend, I think, and then they've got South. And that's South. You would assume that Latrell is back by then. And certainly Tavita Totola, you would hope so, is back by then as well. So that's a South team that's getting troops back as the season goes on. Really tough.
They need it though, because they haven't been good themselves. Their first 50 minutes was pretty good. Their last half hour was terrible.
Absolutely, and I think that is a sign of a lack of quality in the team. So gradually, as the game goes on, the quality wins out, and I think that there's an element of that with the Sharks, and I think that that's a reason why they can't beat top 8 teams, and that's with their full strength squad. You look at their forward pack. Apart from Britton Okora, there's no elite in their forward pack, is there? Like, there's no go-to guy, and that's why, there's some names being thrown around at the moment, Payne Haas, Tino. To me, they should be the club going after one of those big-time A-grade forwards, because they need one.
Yeah, you look at, Wade Graham, Dale Finucane, they were great footballers, and they're both still, they're still NRL players. They still do a decent job, but they're not that elite player that they once were.
No, and Dale was bought there for a reason. I get why they signed him. I'm not taking anything away from that, but let's be honest. When Dale signed his contract, he was closer to the end of his career than the beginning, and he's still got 2 more years of that deal left on you would assume pretty good money being the captain. So it's tough for them financially. I'm not sure where they go to from here. Wade Graham, you would assume that this is his last year, certainly in the NRL, because I can't see him going anywhere else other than Cronulla. And I have heard him talk about that he would like to finish his career in the Super League, so that's maybe one to watch. But I just think they are lacking when all of their best forwards only play 40 minutes, that's a sign of lack of quality in the squad.
Yeah, exactly right. It's pretty obvious, and then when they're not on the front foot, like most teams, and this is an obvious statement, but when they're not on the front foot and things aren't flowing for them, they really struggle to drag a game back. And again, the game on the weekend, when they came back, was it more the injuries and down to 14 or 15 blokes for the opposition, more than what was them playing good footy to get back into the game?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. The Sharks have issues there. They know that. They're probably underdogs to make the 8 at the moment, just with that brutal run home. Out of anyone, they've got the toughest. And if they make the 8, they'll absolutely deserve it. And then it's funny, because if they make the 8, we'll be talking about them as a premiership threat, because they would have had to go through this draw and win some of these games. So they would have had to have beat a Penrith, beat a South along the way, beat a Storm, beat a Cowboys. So they've got all those tough games on the run home, and they've got a team like they've got games like Newcastle on the run home as well, when Newcastle is not a top 8 team, but they're on fire.
And if they win a game like that, they will become a top 8 side, because the Knights and Manly are 1 point out of the 8.
Yes.
So there's games there. I'd ruled out Manly completely last week when we had a chat, and now I've looked at their run home after beating Cronulla, and 3 of their last 5 games they should win, and then there's one other one that's a toss of the coin. So that puts them in position to potentially make the 8. The Knights, again, like you said, they're on fire. The Sharks are going ordinary. The Rabbitohs are going ordinary as well. So, I think the Raiders are the other team. Their for and against is horrendous, but they've got that extra win up their sleeve, so they may just about be safe.
Well, it was a costly loss for them, and a gritty win by New Zealand. It's a game that they would lose in previous years. I think Sean Johnson has to be the favourite for the Dally M, particularly when you look at their run home, and I think New Zealand are a pretty good chance of winning every game that they've got for the rest of the regular season.
they'll win most of them, won't they? I mean, they've got a good run home, so even if they drop one or two, I think they're going to finish top four for sure.
Extra bye up their sleeve.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They've got the extra bye there. So do the Broncos too, though. So I think top two might be out of the question because the Broncos and Penrith have got that 4-point buffer. The Warriors do look like they're going to get a home semi, though, at some stage, which it'll be enormous over there.
I just want to go back to Newcastle for a second. What about their team separates them from a top four team? What do they need to add? Like Jaden Brayley back, I think would be immense if he was healthy, but he just can't stay healthy.
Halves.
So you look at
their
halves, and you've got Jackson Hastings in there at the moment. Can Jackson Hastings be part of a top four side?
No.
No.
No. And I mean, there's no point even trying to discuss it. The reality is no, he can't be. And Tyson Gamble as well. I mean, with those halves, they're not a top four side. They could be a top 8 side, but there's a difference there. Those guys are, their consistency is getting better. But look, to be fair, when you look at the elite halves, well, they're around an 8 out of 10 every week, no matter what. And every now and again, they throw that 10 out of 10 weeks together. I think the ceiling for guys like, the Newcastle halves is probably a 7 out of 10. So there's a difference there.
You worried about your Eels?
No, not at the moment, because the other results that have fallen the way they have would have been good to get that win against the Cowboys. But obviously, it's a tough ask. Cowboys are on fire at the moment, and going up to Townsville. The Joe Offahengawi signing has really it concerned me from the very beginning, and it showed me why on the weekend. So they need to try and get some of that horrible errors and lazy efforts in defence out of his game, which Arthur's got a track record of doing. You look at what he did with guys like Isaiah Papali'i and Cartwright. So he can transform those blokes, but yeah, they just need to get a couple of troops back. I mean, they're without Dylan Brown for another week. So that's, they know they've got him coming. Campbell Gillard and Seibold are out for a couple more weeks as well. So that's certainly, they're big outs. If they can jag a win or two over the next fortnight, I still think they'll make the 8. They're no chance of the top 4 now.
What do you?
And I don't think the Cowboys are either, mate. Like, they're on this run, but they've got to keep this run going. The run that's been 8 weeks now.
Yeah,
it's hard to stay up for that long.
Yeah, no doubt. A loss will come for them pretty soon, I would say. And it might be a game against the Titans. The Titans were embarrassed last week against the Roosters, and the Roosters, for the first time all year, scored 30 points in a game, and they did it in a half against the Titans. So the Titans will have some wounds to lick over the next week, and they could put in a surprise performance. Who knows? But I just want to ask you about the Bulldogs. A lot of narrative going around at them at the moment. They're making a lot of strange acquisitions and signings, or certainly being talked about that anyway. They bring Liam Knight over on a deal immediately. They're talking to Blake Taff. A lot of these deals, does it concern you if you're a Bulldogs fan going forward with these deals?
Yeah, definitely. But again, it depends on how long they've signed them for and what how much they're paying them as well. So, there's always a lot of narrative around blokes getting signed, and the media likes to make a story out of nothing. So it depends. If Liam Knight is on $80,000 a year to finish off the year, well, it's a bargain. Like the Matt Lodge and Wood signings for Manly. Like, people will jump all over that and bag it. But at the end of the day, I think Woods would be lucky to be on $100,000, and Lodge is on a train and trial, so he's definitely under a lot less than that. So they're good signings. If Knight's on a small amount of money, it's a good signing. If Knight's on $200,000 for the rest of the year and $500,000 next year, well, it's a terrible signing. So it's all relative, and we don't know what they're getting paid. No,
and you are right. It is the perspective of the Bulldogs, what they see those players at. There's the rumour about Blake Taff, though. What do you see Blake Taff as? It's nothing against him, obviously, but I don't see anyone winning a premiership with Blake Taff, and we've seen this in a grand final. Like, we've literally seen the liabilities be fully exposed in a grand final. if Latrell played that grand final for South, they beat Penrith that night.
Yeah, potentially. I hear there's a whisper floating around that Ilias might be getting dropped this week and Taft's being moved into halfback. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes there. From what I understand, he was a halfback coming through until he hit that sort of 18, 19 years of age. So it will be interesting to see if they do drop Ilias, who, I think he goes okay, but he's not an elite halfback, so it might be something that they look at.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a quick break and be back.
Mint Sports is kicking off Mint Trips. This August, Mint Trips is venturing north for the Darwin Cup. The package includes return flights, 4 nights of Como, tickets to the race days with all hospitality included. So if you and your mates are in need of a bit of winter sun, love the horses, and don't mind a mint time, head on over to Mint Sports and check out the Mint Trips Darwin Cup package. Limited tickets available. Get in now.
Seibs, what game are you looking forward to most this weekend?
I think the Storm Parramatta game, because it's always a great contest between those two clubs. Historically, they've always given it to each other. Para's got a decent record against Melbourne, which a lot of teams don't. So it gives me hope as a Para fan. But I just think it's going to be a cracking game because top 4's on the line for Melbourne and top 8's on the line for Para. So I expect that, I expect it to be a good game. But Tom, there's a number of interesting games this weekend. The Broncos-Roosters game, the Roosters they have to show something. I can't see them making the 8 from where they are, but they're going to still believe they can because mathematically they can. And the Raiders-Knights, whoever wins that game, well, the Raiders win and they're home. They're assured of making the finals. They lose and the Knights pick up another 2 points. It's it's on for them. And same with the Dragons-Manly game. That's a winnable game for Manly. They should win that, and if they do, then all of a sudden, depending on how the results go, the other games, they could be in the 8. So
that's the type of game.
There's a number of interesting ones.
That's the type of game that Manly's had a problem with this year. The games that they should win, like St George are talented enough to spoil the party here for Manly. And after an emotional win last week, that was a exhilarating last sort of 15 minutes. Like it's pressure's on Manly here to keep winning because they have to keep pace with this crowd. So I just want to touch on the Roosters. And we're going to break down all these teams in the off season, but the Roosters have had a woeful year. They will not make the 8. They're not good enough. I just fail to believe that they won't spring something in the off season. I just don't think that they're going to be content to go in next year with a relatively similar squad. Like I think that there is a big shake-up coming. Do you think Suwali gets moved on early? They go after Bradman Best. Do you think that they go after a Ben Hunt? What do you think happens there?
I think Suwali will definitely get moved on early, and Dom Young's coming anyway, so that's going to fill that spot. I'm not sure. They do need a centre. They need a half, and they need another middle. So I don't know. It depends how much money they've got invested in certain players. And Teddy on the weekend was unreal. The rest of the side was good, but again, it was against a Titans who were very underwhelming, and they had no Tino, and Tino's the heartbeat. I was expecting a big game out of Fafita, and he was a little bit quiet. So, I don't think they should get too excited about that one.
Can you see them going fishing for a big fish, maybe Payne Haas?
Oh, of course. They're always going to put themselves in the mix because, they've got Politis, who's got such a big community around him as far as there's a lot of money, a lot of business. So, they can get those third-party deals sorted fairly easy. So it wouldn't surprise me if they go after someone like Haas because I think they do need a big middle and a half.
The Storm-Parramatta game, both teams coming off a loss. The Storm, God, they were embarrassing at stages last week, particularly defensively. They just let Newcastle roll through the middle. I'd say the tackling pads will be out this week. Pappenhausen's rumoured to be back in a few weeks. Do you think it's worth trying to? Obviously, they're not going to rush him, but as soon as he's ready to go, would you put him back into this team to try charge for the rest of the year? Like, is it worth trying to get Pappenhausen back in as quick as possible?
Yeah, definitely. But I think we'll see him play 2 or 3 weeks of Queensland Cup. They're not going to throw him straight back in. They'll want to see that he can, put a couple of back-to-back games together. And so what he's talking 3 weeks. What have we got? 5, 6 weeks to go in the season.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me if he plays, 2 or 3 games of Q Cup. If he's back to the last round of the season, well, you're going to use him if he's available.
It might be a case of luxury too for Melbourne. If they can make the top 4, then they get that second chance. So if Pappenhausen's, say, first or second game was to be in that first final, it's not the world's biggest crime because you get the second chance.
I don't think they'd do that, though. I think he'd be on the bench at best if it was a final, just because it's such a key. I know it's not like he hasn't played with them before, but it'll be almost 18 months before he's back, and just the combinations. They're going to want at least a game with those combinations together before they throw him in my opinion. Yeah,
absolutely. And Cronulla take on Penrith. Do you see any hope there for Cronulla to get a win this weekend?
Well, if about 4 blokes from Penrith get COVID and Theory gets put in the bin or sent off, they're a chance.
They're so content to win a game 34-32.
The Sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And against Penrith, well, they're not going to score. They're not going to score more than 3 tries against Penrith.
That's right.
And their defence just isn't good enough to stop Penrith from scoring more than that. I just can't see a world where they get close to Penrith this week.
Well, Penrith concede 11 points a game, so you've got to go into the mindset of trying to win 12-10.
And Penrith conceded 3 tries against the Dogs, who are terrible. So that Cleary's not going to be happy about that. I'm sure that'll be their focus.
No, absolutely not. The Cowboys are going along really well, but like we've said, they've been up for so long. Like a lot of people talking them like the only team that can challenge Penrith. I don't buy that because they've been playing semi-final football since round 12.
Exactly. I mean, I think they will flog the Titans this week. Next week they've got the Broncos, which will be an absolute cracker. It'll be the week or 2 after that where, there's a bit of a letdown. So I'm just looking at their draw. They do have a bye after that, so that may freshen them up a bit. Then they go into a couple of other tough games. So they've got the Sharks, which, by then the Sharks will know where their season's at. It might be must-win for them. And then they've got the Dolphins last. So, that's again second last round. So that's another winnable game for them. But I think that they'll drop one or two of those games after the bye. They've just been up for too long.
See, how many teams, I know you and I both have said Penrith, the gold standard, would take a miracle to beat them, but how many teams could challenge Penrith come grand final day?
Well, you look at the way Brisbane are playing at home. So I'm not sure what the stat is. I think they've played about 80% of their games in Queensland and 70% of those have been at Suncorp. So if they can get a home semi, which they will, the way they're going, that puts them in a prelim. They're in a prelim, they can make a GF. Who knows what happens? All you got to do is be there. If they don't get a home semi there for that first or second week, I don't know how they'll go on the road. I think I had the Rabbits as a chance of being a contender, but I'm off that now. I just don't think their forward pack's good enough. And they would need Latrell to cut loose, which he can do. He can have one of those games.
They lack another quality middle, don't they?
They do. And that's why they went with Brisbane for, was it about 50 minutes they went with them? And then they just couldn't keep going with them because they lack that extra middle. That's where, Cronulla tend to fall over at times. That's where Manly fell over in that last 15 minutes, not because they don't have the middles, but they had middles that were injured. So you lose you go forward men, and things unravel around it because you obviously it helps you get on the front foot, but it's also then withstanding the onslaught from the other forward pack coming at you. You need those big bodies and quality big bodies to be able to stay in the game and then fight and turn momentum and get yourself back in it.
Just on the Warriors, they get Roger Tuivasa-Sheck next year. You would assume he would play centre. What's the position of need at the Warriors? They've had a tremendous year, and a lot of it's been through effort, but let's face it, you need some talent to win the premiership. So whilst effort is absolutely beautiful and it's fantastic that they've gone this well, they're going to have to add some talent to their squad. What area of the squad do you think that they go in?
Oh, I think he plays fullback.
Tuivasa-Sheck?
I can't see him coming back to not play fullback. So that then moves Charles to either to the wing or to the centres. Rocco Berry goes quite good, so it'll be interesting to see what decision they make there. The thing that they need is a half. Look, let's be honest. Sean Johnson hopefully wins the Daily M. I think he deserves it. He's only got another year or two in him. Okay, and there's no guarantee that he can put this together again next year.
You're not a fan of Luke Metcalf?
Oh, he goes okay. He's a good footballer, but he's not elite. Like Luke Metcalf's not getting talked about to win the Daily M. Sean Johnson is. So
what
how do you replace Sean Johnson?
Yeah, so that should be the biggest focus at the moment because let's be realistic. Sean Johnson, whilst being their best player, he's not going to be there when the Warriors win a premiership.
No,
you wouldn't think so.
Win this year.
Yeah, that's right. And
so I just think that Charms goes to the centres, probably for Pompey, and then obviously, there's a few things I could look at. I'm just going through their squad here. Wade Egan's improved out of sight, so you can give a big tick there for their dummy half department. But I don't know what they have coming in behind him. So if he gets injured or starts to have a run of poor form, I know they got Freddie Lussick there, but Freddie Lussick's not, he's not one of the elite hookers.
Yeah.
So that could be a position that they do look at as well.
Yeah, it's all about depth, isn't it? Because you know that if someone goes down for Penrith, whoever comes in is going to be able to do the job. And even to their best player, Nathan Cleary goes down, Jack Cogger's coming in, they're still favourites to win the title.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think the Raiders have the forward pack to match Penrith. I just don't know if they have enough class in the back line.
Yeah, particularly at fullback, and I think Seb Chris has done a commendable job. But I really wish, is Xavier Savage injured or what's going on there? Because he was the guy to me that I thought if he comes on this year, he can really catapult them. He's got so much X factor.
You're right, mate. I think he is injured now, but he'd been playing on the wing for the last 6 weeks in reserve grade. So that's how far he's fallen from grace as far as their pecking order, because he was the first choice fullback at one point, and now he's been on the wing in reserve grade. So I'm not too sure whether he's just fallen out of form completely or whether it's niggling injuries that have been floating around. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Seb Chris has done a fair job, but he's not you're not going to see a team win a comp with Seb Chris as fullback, in my opinion.
No, probably not. That'll just about do it from this week. Siebes, good to talk to you, mate.
Thanks, mate.
This has been the 60 Go podcast, brought to you by Mint Sports, and that is full time.